decades, we've seen China gain increasing geopolitical clout. So I think the Chinese offer to propose something is definitely being welcomed.
I lived in southern China throughout the pandemic period, and my main feeling under zero COVID policy was that I felt very safe from contracting the virus for 3 years. The effects of zero COVID policy were quite insignificant for us. I only had a gentle curfew for 14 days at the very beginning of the 2020. Back then, each family could only leave the residential complex once every 2 days for shopping and other errands, expect for doctor visits. Our residential complex has a forest park inside. We could go for walks and jogging in the park unhindered. I did my rounds every day. How people were affected by zero COVID policy in China varied greatly. For us, we never had longer curfews later on, in contrast to tier 1 cities like Shanghai, Beijing, or Guangzhou. The rural areas of China, which population approximately 35%, were hardly affected after the first few weeks of 2020. The closure of all China in the report of some Western media was misinformation, even if large cities like Shanghai, with more than 20 million people, were cordoned off. But that's only 1 to 2% of the total population. In pursuit of the 1948 UN Declaration of Human Rights, which states everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person, China has prioritized the right to life over individual liberty. When the emergence of the less dangerous Omicron variant, the tide finally turned, and it was possibly also necessary due to increasing dissatisfaction among affected groups of people, such as small business owners and students, to open in November 2020. The Omicron wave, which swept the entire country for around 6 weeks, was essentially over by mid-January 2023. How to judge the Chinese zero COVID policy with facts? While the EU and the USA each owe more than 1.1 million deaths to a neoliberal, business-oriented COVID-ignored policy, there were only about 90,000 deaths only from COVID in China up to mid-February 2023, this year. According to projections, China has saved 1.6 million people from deaths. Through the zero COVID policy, China has also managed to increase life expectancy in the last 3 years, unlike the United States and various EU countries where life expectancy was fallen. While not much is publicized in the US and EU about the huge number of people who have died from COVID there and the suffering of those affected and their families, the Western media has diagnosed that the Chinese zero COVID policy has had and will have a catastrophic impact on China's economy and a looming crash into recession. But what are the facts here? China is also doing better than Europe and the US on the economy. In the first COVID year of 2020, China was the only major economy with positive growth, plus 2.3 nominal GDP, while the West slid into recession. Again, in nominal GDP growth in 2021, China far outperformed Europe and the United States, plus 8.4% compared to Germany, plus 2.6, and USA plus 5.9. And how was 2020? The same result. While China had a growth of plus 3%, Germany had 1.9% and the USA 2.1%. Forecasts for 2023 will widen China's lead. Growth of 5.2 to 6% is forecast. Germany is narrowly avoiding stagnation, while the USA is estimated at plus 1.4. The facts make it easy to see who coped better with COVID-19.
China's economic progress over the past 40 years has fueled global growth and benefited both developing and developed countries, which is a common acknowledgement. The billionaire George Soros, however, said last year that China is a threat to open society. During his long speech at this year's MSC, he again pictured China in a rather dark manner. Under its present President Xi Jinping, mentioning, for example, its zero-COVID policy, its relationship with Russia, with Taiwan, and the surveillance balloon over the USA, coming to the conclusion that China won't be a dominant military and political force.
China has been accused in Europe of having made Europe dependent through its large and efficient manufacturing base, as if it was Beijing's decision that so many large corporations went to China to invest in low-cost manufacturing facilities and, increasingly, also research centers in China. As a matter of fact, Europe and the USA accusingly whine about the possibility of being blackmailed by products such as rare earth. So far, however, China has never used its monopoly in various areas to the detriment of the West, since Chinese companies want to do business. On the contrary, the United States and Europe are exploiting China's dependence, particularly on the latest technology, and impeding China's development by refusing to supply microchips and other products. And the stronger the sanction pressure from the USA, the clearer it becomes that in order to achieve technological independence, China must develop its own leading-edge technology even more intensively, broadly, and quickly, especially in the fields of semiconductors, i.e., AI, software, aircrafts, engines, etc. The result will be that companies such as Qualcomm, Intel, Samsung, or ASML in Europe will not only lose the Chinese market in the future, but also they're exposed to strong Chinese competition and greater price pressure on the world market. Facing the West's attempts at decoupling China, the previous strong export orientation of China towards the USA and the EU could become a major problem for it. The expansion of the BRICS group to BRICS Plus is expected to provide additional impetus for the Chinese export economy. The Worldwide Belt and Road Initiative is an important channel for new export markets. The economic growth in China will be strategically generated more internally, and the export orientation will be weakened. Increasing the standard of living with a boost in demand is given top priority by the Chinese government for the future.
Indeed, it is emerging, and I've been listening very carefully to what Mr. Fitzgerald has had to say, and China is unavoidably a big power, and I think also what can be said, what has been done in China in the last 40, 50 years has never happened before in history of mankind. It is an extraordinary success from the point of view of getting people out of poverty and developing a country which is now at the forefront of technology, economic growth, and selling its political model. Yeah. But then the question is also at which price?